Hello friends, Elise Anamkara here for Anamkara Astrology. Welcome to this download about the full moon in Aries taking place on October 9th at 4:55 p.m. Eastern Time. And this is the culmination, the opposition between the sun, the conscious energies, and the moon, the unconscious energies, that we have been experiencing or building up to since the new moon on September 25th, that took place at 5:55 p.m. on the Eastern Daylight Time. The Libra new moon that takes place every, end of September or very beginning of October, depending on, the cycles. And it's kind of known as cuffing season. That's what I always say, that the official start of cuffing season, starts with that new moon in Libra, when the sun and the moon are conjunct each other in the sign of partnership of Libra. And the official end of cuffing season happens when we have our new moon in Aries at the end of March, beginning of April, which is also the beginning of the lunar zodiac, and when we have the need to individuate. But the new moon that took place in Libra on the 25th was not a regular cuffing season Libra energy. Instead, we had a lot of stuff going on, including the fact that Mercury was retrograde in Virgo and had just backtracked from the sign of Libra into Virgo. So we are getting to see where the bridge between these two archetypes, or these two stages of consciousness, the service-oriented, devoted, refining, perfecting Virgo, right, the Vestal Virgin, and Libra, when we cross over into the transpersonal part of the zodiac and we repeat the process of development now in union or in partnership with the greater community, with the greater collective, first through one-on-one interpersonal relationships. So we may have still had that same impulse or instinct to relate to someone or something, or to have more committed, ongoing interaction with them when the new moon in Libra started in September 25th, on September 25th. But there are so many larger elements happening right now and throughout this time that it was really more about a recalibration to the self, a re-relating to the self, and how can we perfect it so that we are more functional, more practical, more purposeful, and have an easier time protecting our own individual process and that which is valuable to us. Okay, these are all Virgo things, right? What is practical? What is, will produce tangible results, repeatable results, process and procedure and tidiness and organization and all that kind of stuff. So we were really getting an understanding of that which we have been missing historically, and what may have just seemed like a real difficult time relating even to our own selves, now that so much has changed in the world, in our consciousness, and what we now may need from our interpersonal relationships and long-term commitments, both professional and marital, by the way. It also rules enemies, so you may have gotten some new understandings or insights into what makes it, into things that are, diametrically opposed to one another, and what that really means. I actually wasn't thinking about this until just now, but when we talk about bipartisan or partisan politics. The second someone is having a conversation with me that is about a general or universal need, want, issue, etc., and then all of a sudden they are unable to express themselves without bringing a political affiliation into it, I have to stop them and say, is this really a political something, or have you learned to frame this conversation or this discussion or this conflict or this argument into the most obvious or accessible opposition forces that you have available to you, which with the 24-hour news loop and everything from hurricanes to global warming to public, health crises and whatever being highly politicized as opposed to human matters, I understand why people have the need or have the desire or just, it's just the most available thing to just back into, conversations where, there's a clear my side versus their side, which is funny because that's kind of what a full moon in Aries opposite the sun in Libra is kind of about. And we have a bunch of other things that are happening in the sky. For instance, as I am doing this, Pluto, which is the soul's will and the higher octave of Mars, which is man's will or ego will, is stationing direct. So it's been, I wanted to do this a few days ago, and then I wanted to do it last night, and I'm a Cancer moon, so the second that real full moon energy started to come into play, my energy was zapped. It often happens around the full moon. I have a couple of days of kind of like sketchy sleep before, and then the day that it starts to like really take hold, I just am out like a light. It's crazy. So over this process of relating, that started on September 25th, and it was much more internalized and us cleaning up our ability to relate to ourselves and therefore have a cleaner, more honest approach when it comes to relating to others. We are also coming to a point where we are understanding the individual will to act and to be, to be actualized, to be fully individualized, and to be able to go from impulse to action as our own individual sovereign selves of Aries, and how that relates to our ability to relate in equal, reciprocal partnership and relationship. This is being further complicated during this full moon, as the full moon will be conjuncting Chiron, the wounded healer, as it makes its opposition to the sun. Oh man, this is usually, I'm saying usually because I always feel that new moon in Libra is where we get into the relationship, and then a couple of weeks later when it comes to a full moon, we're kind of like, all right, but what does me as the individual bring to or am experiencing, or like what is coming to a head as I have entered into partnership, and 2 weeks later I am impelled to act on my own impulses, but now it's in the context of relationship and what is really fair and what is really manageable. And this is a time when we are just getting this on all sides, and we are just being asked to address the deeper questions with precision, with commitment to cleaning it up and cleaning up our process, becoming more discerning about that which we have around us, that which we have inside of us, as it pertains to our ability to act as the self, relate to the self, and then act and relate in accordance to the other in partnership, in a hope to balance each other out, to get some insights into our shadows, and to not fear that which we cannot usually see on our own. That is part of why relationship exists. I love to go back to the example of existence, like human existence starting as a single cell organism and then gaining speed and then, just whirling around in a circle until it splits in two, but they're like sharing a singular axis and they're just like rotating around each other. But you can never see your own dark side, right? The side that you can't see. So you have to experience the shadow through the mirror of other in relationship to like really get a rear view mirror and see that which you don't really have visible to yourself. You know it's there, but it is it's out of your view, and you have to trust and see and experience the shadow of self, oftentimes by seeing it projected onto the other and then getting feedback from that interaction. That is the nature of relationship. So if you have constantly been relating to a smaller sphere than you, then, you know, that gravitational pull is off and enmeshment is likely, or someone flying off into orbit is more likely. And we just have a bunch of stuff that the universe is reflecting to us that is like, wow, how much personal accountability for yourself and your own wounds and your own desire to really see and experience your shadow have you been doing, and what practical steps have you been taking towards cleaning this up so that you can relate better to yourself, so that you can enter more equal, beneficial unions, and or have you been sitting in your wounds, your ego wounds, that which cannot be healed, that which you cannot heal in yourself, i.e. Chiron, this wounded healer. And man, the sun opposing Chiron is putting some heat on that. But guess what? When you have the wound exposed and it's getting that air and it's getting that sun, it has a chance to heal itself. You might be wincing in pain. You might be concerned that they are open wounds that you have fully exposed by that partner, in partnership, right? Both the sun and Venus in Libra. But that is the function, that is like the purpose of partnership. And that is also the purpose of the sun shining on the wounds, which is to heal it. So we really have a major choice during this full moon, and that is, do we allow our wounds and our wounded self and that which we want and expect for ourselves and from ourselves that have not yet come to fruition, or the places where we feel impotent or disempowered, to affect what we can do for ourselves now, and what kind of partnerships that we are worthy of entering, or even being worthy of entering a beautiful and balanced partnership at all. And I also feel that it's really important that we take a look at the fact that, we have these Mars, both the lower octave, both Mars and Pluto, generating a lot of action and heat in our direction. We also have, all of this Venus-ruled Libra Sun, Libra Venus, and also the North Node in Venus ruled Taurus. It's asking us to do the work to balance the masculine and the feminine energies in ourselves, and to do it in a way that is practical, that will serve us going forward. We are responsible for the physical and economic security that we create for ourselves, this foundation on which we build the new world. And new world's definitely something that we're going to be talking about more now that Pluto is coming direct, and it is in its last degrees of Capricorn, which, if you do not know, again, Pluto is the soul's will. And Pluto entered Saturn-ruled Capricorn in 2008. Pluto, the planet of extremes, the extremes that we go all the way to experience, or that generate a death, so that we can have an opportunity to regenerate and be reborn into something else, into something better, into something eternal. Yeah, it entered the sign of control, governance, conformity, external hierarchical authority, big business, big government in 2008. it's going to move into Aquarius, the sign of the power, the evolutionary, creative power of the individual and community. That's Aquarius in 2024. So we got a lot of shit going on. It might feel we're having a major as above, so below moment, as within, so without, and it is often amplified or embodied, exhibited, reflected from this full moon in Aries that happens every October. But man, this one feels so on the nose, apples for apples, 1-to-1. That which I do or don't do in myself, for myself, is immediately reflected outside in my partnerships, in my response to my job, my boss, my whatever long-term contracts that I have. That which I'm not willing to do for myself, I cannot expect to receive in partnership, just hands down. And it can be very difficult also to see what about this is real and what isn't, because, well, Mercury just came direct and has just cleared its, it's still in its shadow, cleared its storm already. But then we had Mercury, Then we had Mercury, opposing Neptune. Woo! Mercury opposing Neptune. We still have Mercury opposing Neptune, essentially. And by the way, this Mercury opposing Neptune is right on my, in their home signs, by the way, right? Because Mercury rules Virgo and Pisces is Neptune's domain. So, and that opposition that is happening right now is basically on my Venus and Jupiter opposition that is natally in my chart. Everything that's happening right now is actually setting off a mutable grand cross that I have in my chart, and it's been interesting. So anyway, so for these past few days leading up to this full moon, it may have been trying to focus. It may have been very difficult to focus. That's totally normal. Even though we have this intellectual, need to focus and ground ourselves and to take practical steps forward based on the information that we received when Mercury was in retrograde, to figure out how to clean up our process, how to really get our goods, our services, ourselves ready to go to market and to enter the larger, realm of humanity. But then, with this opposition to Neptune, it's like, oh my God, how the fuck do I do that? I can't even tie my shoes. Everything is crazy. Everything feels like, I'm like, it's delusional. I just don't know what the fuck is happening. And that is actually a sign or a trigger for you to feel out what is possible for you and what is not possible for you in terms of moving forward, in terms of what you're working to manifest. You have to intuit what is capable, what is possible at the moment, what is most important right now for you, not someone else, for you as the next step. You cannot rely on the rational A, B, C, D, linear process that you may have laid out for yourself before. It's just impossible, And then, of course, we do have both of those, Mercury and Neptune, also making a square to Mars, which will be going retrograde by the end of this month. And boy, oh boy, will that be fun. One last thing that I want to say about that Mars going retrograde in Gemini is that the last time that we had Mars in retrograde, it was in its home sign of Aries, and it was while the lunar nodes were in Gemini and Sagittarius. So I want you to think about, and I want to say that was in April, like late April through June of 2020. And what's crazy is, we also had Chiron there in Aries, and we also had a lot to be angry about individually, as well as collectively. And those ego wounds were, really the light was on them completely, with the sun there, because the sun was also in Aries at the time this happened. And I feel like Mars in Aries moving backwards at that time is literally what kept us all from just killing each other or going to war with others, with ourselves, just completely losing our shit. That Mars in Aries retrograde really produced this tail between the legs kind of energy. And I feel that this Mars in Gemini going almost all the way back through, I think it's going to reach 25 degrees of Gemini before going back to 8 degrees or 5 degrees of Gemini, is we are getting a chance to go back over what we said or did not say, do or did not do, the actions and the stances that we did or did not take since the last Mars retrograde. And it's in the sign of Gemini, which is where the North Node was at the time. And it is asking us to, and when the lunar node was in Gemini, we were being asked to consider the facts, gather information, just have ideas and conversations back and forth with people in your immediate environment so that you knew what the facts were, boots on the ground, you know what I'm saying? What is really going on, so that we could take that real-time information and chip away at the truths that we hold to be self-evident, okay? The doctrine, both religious and law doctrine, and, precedents that have been set by old, beliefs, collective beliefs of Sagittarius. And we really needed to be gathering that information and transmitting it. And it wasn't a time to judge it. It was just a time to just receive it and give it and experience it and keep an open mind, be as objective as possible. And I know that a lot of us had a hard time doing that at the time. But now that the lunar nodes are, almost halfway through the subsequent nodes. So the North Node is in Taurus and the South Node is in Scorpio. Now Mars is giving us a second chance to be like, what would I have done differently? What do I need to do now? Because it's essential. And it's a major time to not let our ego wounds or our fear of individuation or our feeling of unworthiness as an individual keep us from acting on the information we now know and the opportunity that the universe is giving us, is reflecting about not moving forward with things until we go back and address our actions or inactions based on Gemini information in the immediate environment, okay, in our education, in the information that is being shared with us daily. And it's really a time to dig in and get real. It's time to get real. It's going to be more difficult moving something new forward. But what we can do is collect the broken pieces of self and of things that we tried to start or, since the last Mars retrograde. And I feel like it's such a great opportunity to take that chance to really make the self whole, to remember that the fear is there to remind you that you're not here forever and that you have something to say and you have something to do, and that it can't be dictated, or it shouldn't be dictated to you by someone outside of yourself. Yeah. I know the Leo King, I have to say, the first thing that I thought I was going to, when I was writing this a couple days ago in my notes, is that I was going to call this overall time period with the full moon in Aries, the don't Benedict Arnold yourself, Benjamin Franklin your life. And that is a direct reference to the Leo Kings talking about the similarities between the 1776, October 1776, with Capricorn, Pluto turning direct, as well as the full moon in Aries and what was happening, and this whole, push towards, freedom. And the only thing that the U.S. really had going on is that with its limited troops, it was able to use, misinformation and strategy and stuff like that to make the small gains that it had been making. But then Benedict Arnold, who had felt very unseen and undervalued, and his ego and his identity were under attack, he began to negotiate with the British and sold out the, strategy and the location of the U.S. troops, the American troops, the colonial troops, the rebels, to the British. And then the British quickly gained an upper hand that was really one that the U.S. would not have been able to recover from without some kind of foreign intervention, which is when Capricorn, okay, very Ben Franklin, acting, I know he has got to have a lot of Aquarius in his chart, and this all takes place in Sagittarius. At the end of November in 1776, he goes across to France to ask, the French government, who were in the middle of their own revolution, to assist us, both ideologically, both with inspiration, with help, as well as like resources and men. And so this kind of quote that I did get 100%, I just want to let you know, I got this 100% from the Leo King. So if you don't follow him on social media, if you're not a part of High Vibe, all those kind of things, please do. I do not want to plagiarize this notion. I would have never thought of this if he had not shared this with us, with me, with the collective, via one of his videos. But that idea of don't Benedict Arnold yourself. Do not, he also brings up, don't negotiate with your wounds, don't like Libra negotiate, try to be diplomatic with these ego wounds that have been like plaguing you, or that, you don't feel that you have like the strength or the courage to overcome. So instead you're like, maybe I'll just like take a little less or change who I am or whatever. He's like, no, don't do that. And so that meant, in my mind, I really felt like, oh my God, don't Benedict Arnold yourself. Don't be a traitor to the self because you don't know how to fully individuate, or it seems frightening or scary or impossible to individuate and really actualize as the you that you came here to be. Instead, you need to innovate. You need to take the rules and the protocol that you have, that you've gained, that you know about, and you need to you need to be the mad scientist and, know what your value is and do what you can do, starting from within and letting it pour outward into your relationships and how you relate to the world. You need to evolve. You need to stick to your guns and just feel the whole weight of the self and know that you already are actualized, and anything that you feel that you don't have or is in your way or whatever, it's just a matter of time and of will to overcome. So I hope this has been a beneficial full moon conversation for you, and I look forward to seeing you next time. All the best. Okay, sorry, I'm back. I had to put on a hat. I was very cold. Anyway, I just want to, I love this idea of cuffing season not being cuffing season, like with the other. Instead, it's like cuffing yourself to yourself. You're like, you know what, we're in this together for eternity. And by together, I mean, I am me for the rest of my time here. And my want or understanding that relationship and partnership and fairness and diplomacy and union with other, which also entails a union with my shadow self and that which I cannot see in myself and therefore project onto other to experience or to be acknowledged. It's all you, man. It's all you. And we're all doing it. And so I'm really appreciative, even though it's just been effing insanity. Like I said, this Mercury, Neptune, opposition, and also Mars, just blew over my Lilith Chiron conjunction, which is, just a few degrees north of my descendant. And Mars just passed through my, the opposition to my Uranus and Sagittarius. It's like, yeah, I definitely feel absolutely that I am feeling this so majorly as an individual, which, that being said, all mutable signs, I feel, are really in for it. As well as, and I never really thought of why, and I can't remember which astrologer. It was either Stars, Moon, and Sun, or it was Saggy B, I think her name is, on Twitter. I think it was Stars. I think it was Danielle, and that's Stars, Moon, and Sun. She was saying Cancer, and I could have gotten that wrong, but she was saying that Cancer placements, like major Cancer placements, as well as the mutable placements, are like kind of really in for it in terms of like what's going on right now, and through like the next few months, or really like the end of the year. Well, I guess it's definitely like through like the end of November. And I was like, whoa, like, bummer, why? But then I realized a lot of why. And with this like T-square activation, and I kind of didn't understand why the Cancer was originally, but then I realized, well, Libra and Aries are squaring Cancer, so we're having, Sun and the Moon squaring Cancer right now. Actually, come to think of that, the full moon, which takes place at 16 degrees and change, so like 17 degrees Aries, is like just off of my, just off of a exact square to my 19 degrees, 19 minutes Cancer moon. So I understand now why she was saying that. Well, I was so dim at the time. I was like, why? What's going on? And then I'm like, oh. I was also concerned that she might actually be talking about some kind of like hyper adaptability that, that those of us who are wounded, and which we're all wounded, okay, right? Everyone has a Chiron placement. But that people with mutable signs, mutable signs are all about integration and synthesis and transforming that into, well, the next cardinal sign, which is initiation, right? You're synthesizing the information or the feeling or the inspiration, whatever, element we're talking about here. The mutable signs are the end of a cycle, and they are about this synthesizing of the information of the activities of that part of the zodiac, so that we initiate onto another cycle, another level of consciousness. And I must say that I experienced a lot of from the mutable placements in my chart, which include a Sagittarius ascendant, a mutable Jupiter, and Venus, which are both intercepted. That hyper-adaptability is kind of it's like a defense mechanism. It's a survival tool that I find a lot of people with a lot of mutable placements exhibit. And this is not the time to fall into victim mentality or to let our, survival mode or fears take over and us to acquiesce the other in our need or our desire to relate, but instead to dig more in to that I am energy and to allow it to, fuel your natural gifts, wherever those mutable placements are. It's like allow that cardinal martial energy of a Aries moon to like galvanize support for the self and galvanize, this desire to synthesize information in a way that like, this is me, this is me, this is me. And I'm doing what I can and identifying parts of my process that I can work on, that I am working on, and be that, and show other that you're doing it so that they take a fucking note to do it for themselves. And if they're not willing to do it for themselves, well, then they're not the person to join into union with, or that union is no union for you. It's not a beneficial one. It's not mutual. It's trash. Okay. It's trash. So, as someone who has only in recent times realized that my hyper adaptability is something which is completely juxtaposed my fixed, sun and a shit ton of cardinal, Cancer and Capricorn placements, and even, an Aries North Node. If I hadn't been pouring so much energy into this defense mechanism or this survival thing, instead of like separating myself from the environment and the people and the situations that forced me into those, modes to survive, so that I could feel myself out and embody myself more and individuate at a pace and in a way that was, necessary for me, then I wouldn't, be where I am and still figuring out when I am being hyper adaptable or when I'm just being empathetic. Because for a long time, they were just used in tandem, and for a long time for my survival, and then, as I continued on that path, to my detriment. So I would just like to share that piece of advice, that piece of me with you. And again, I do hope that you have a wonderful full moon in Aries. And I hope that you just take the time to honor yourself and know that the best partnership that you have, the one that is always worth investing in, is your partnership, your relationship to self, because that is the relationship on which all other relationships look to in what it is that you can give to them, what it is that you get from them, and how rewarding and beneficial and supportive of your present, healing of your past, and supportive of your future. So again, I'm Elise Anamkara for Anamkara Astrology. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, share with your friends. And if you are interested in a private reading, please contact me at anamkaraastrology.com. Thank you. All the bless.